On the edge of a small, forgotten village stood an old, crumbling house. Its windows were dark and cracked, its door barely hanging on its hinges, and the once white walls were now stained with the decay of years left untouched. The villagers whispered about the house, calling it the Hollow House, but no one dared to go near it. One evening, a group of young friends, Sarah, Ben, Mia and Jack, decided to prove they weren't afraid. They had grown tired of hearing the eerie stories and wanted to see the house for themselves. "It's just an old house," Sarah said with a laugh, trying to hide the tinge of fear in her voice. "Nothing's going to happen." The others agreed, though Jack hesitated. He had always felt an odd unease whenever he passed the house, as if something was watching him from behind the decaying windows. But his friends were determined, and he didn't want to seem scared. The sun had just begun to set when they approached the house, its towering silhouette casting long, menacing shadows. A cold breeze swept through the air, carrying the faint sound of something scratching. It was soft, like nails on wood, but it seemed to come from the house itself. "Did you hear that?" Mia whispered, glancing nervously at the others. "Probably just the wind," Ben shrugged, though his voice wavered slightly. They stood in front of the house for a moment, unsure of what to do. The door creaked open on its own, as if inviting them inside. With a deep breath, Sarah pushed it further, stepping inside first. The others followed reluctantly, and the door slammed shut behind them with a force that made their hearts race. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and the floors creaked under their feet. The rooms were filled with old furniture, cobwebs hanging from the rafters, and a heavy silence that pressed in on them. The smell of decay was overpowering, and the darkness seemed to swallow everything. They walked cautiously down a long hallway, the sound of their footsteps echoing off the walls. Suddenly Jack stopped. He had heard it again. The soft scratching noise, closer this time. He turned to his friends, his face pale. "I don't think we should be here," he said, his voice shaky. But before anyone could respond, a loud crash came from upstairs, followed by a deep guttural growl. "Did you hear that?" Mia gasped, eyes wide with terror. Without another word, they turned and ran toward the exit, but the door was gone, replaced by a solid wall of brick. They pounded on the wall, desperate, but the sound of their fists against it was drowned out by the growling, which was now louder, angrier. Suddenly, a shadow darted across the hallway, too fast for them to make out. Then they saw it, a figure cloaked in tattered black robes with glowing eyes that pierced the darkness. The figure moved towards them with unnatural speed, its long, twisted hands reaching out, its nails sharp as claws. "Run!" Ben shouted. They turned and bolted down the hallway, but the house seemed to shift, stretching and twisting around them. The walls seemed to close in, narrowing the space, as if the house itself was alive, hungry for their fear. They stumbled into a room, and there in the middle of the floor was a large, ancient mirror, its surface cracked and covered in grime. As they drew closer, they saw something that made their blood run cold, reflections of themselves, only they were not standing behind them. They were standing in front of them, staring back with hollow, lifeless eyes. The mirror distorted, rippling like water, and from it a voice spoke low and sinister. "You shouldn't have come." The reflection of Jack in the mirror smiled, but it wasn't his smile. It was something darker, twisted. "No, no!" Jack screamed, backing away, but the others were frozen in terror. The floor beneath them cracked, and a cold hand shot out from the mirror, grabbing Sarah's ankle. She screamed, but before anyone could react, the hand yanked her into the mirror, her body vanishing with a sickening crack. "Sarah!" Mia screamed, but it was too late. The mirror had swallowed her whole. One by one, the others were dragged into the mirror, each vanishing into its dark depths, their screams echoing through the house. In the stillness that followed, the hollow house grew quiet once more. But if you stood outside, you might notice the faintest of movements in the cracked windows, the flicker of dark shapes moving just out of sight. And if you listened carefully on the wind, you might hear it, the soft, scratching sound, as the house waits for its next visitors.